caught my spoiled sister kissing my boyfriend a week before her wedding, told her fiancé thought he ignored it, but he shocked everyone at the wedding as a 28-year-old woman. I found myself in a challenging situation involving my 26-year-old sister and my 29-year-old boyfriend. My sister's wedding was fast approaching, and I began to notice that her behaviour around my boyfriend was becoming increasingly peculiar. Initially, it wasn't anything overt, just small, subtle actions that left me feeling uneasy. It began with seemingly in comments where my sister would often say things like, "Wow, you're so funny," in response to my boyfriend's jokes. Even when they were not particularly amusing, she laughed a bit too enthusiastically at everything he said. At first I tried to dismiss it, thinking that perhaps she was just being overly friendly due to the excitement surrounding the upcoming wedding. However, as time passed, I began to notice more troubling signs. She started to find excuses to touch him casually, like placing a hand on his arm during a conversation, or lightly bumping into him as she walked past. These gestures were subtle, yet unmistakable. I also observed her eyes lingering on him a bit too long when he wasn't looking, which made my stomach churn with discomfort. One evening after we returned home from a family dinner where my sister had been particularly flirtatious, I decided to talk to my boyfriend about it. I turned to him and asked, "Did you notice how Sarah was behaving tonight?" He looked at me with confusion and replied, "What do you mean?" I then explained the behaviours I had observed, the excessive laughing, the unnecessary touching, and the lingering glances. He listened, but after a moment he simply shrugged and said, "I think you're overthinking it. She's probably just excited about the wedding. It's harmless." Despite his reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The situation didn't feel harmless to me at all, despite my boyfriend's reassurances. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so I decided to keep a closer eye on things, hoping that I was just overreacting and that my suspicions were unfounded. But the next few weeks were tense. Every time we were around my sister, I found myself constantly watching her, noticing every little thing she did. It became clear that she was always trying to position herself near my boyfriend. She would often sit next to him whenever she could, and she seemed to find endless excuses to ask for his help with wedding-related tasks. Even when I was standing right there, one day we were all at my parents' house for a family barbecue. At one point, I went inside to use the bathroom, and when I returned, I saw something that made my heart sink. My sister and my boyfriend were talking quietly in a corner of the yard, standing unusually close to one another. My sister was giggling at something he said, a sound that made my stomach ch with unease. The moment they noticed me, they quickly stepped apart and my sister walked away as if nothing had happened. I felt a wave of nausea and anger, but decided not to confront them on the spot, not wanting to create a scene at a family gathering. Instead, I waited until we got home that night. When we were alone, I tried to approach the topic as calmly as I could. I asked my boyfriend and what he and my sister had been discussing earlier. He seemed surprised by my question and explained that they were just talking about some wedding details like the music selection. His response didn't satisfy me. I couldn't help but question why such a simple conversation required them to stand so close together. He sighed, clearly frustrated, and tried to dismiss my concerns. He assured me once again that there was nothing going on, insisting that my sister was just being friendly. But by this point, I couldn't hold back my feelings any longer. I expressed my frustration, pointing out that my sister was practically throwing herself at him and he wasn't doing anything to stop it. My words seemed to hurt him and he looked at me with a pained expression, asking what exactly I expected him to do. He reminded me that she was my sister and he was simply trying to be polite. Telling her to back off seemed out of the question to him. I told him that he could at least set some boundaries, making it clear that he wasn't interested in anything more than a friendly relationship. But he insisted that he wasn't interested in her at all, claiming there was nothing to clarify because was seeing problems that didn't exist. Our conversation went in circles, with neither of us willing to see the other's point of view, leaving us both frustrated and unsure of what to do next. After arguing for a while without any resolution, it became clear that our conversation was going nowhere My boyfriend kept insisting that I was just imagining things, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get him to see what was so painfully obvious to me. In the end, we both went to bed feeling angry and frustrated with the issue still unresolved. The following day, I realised that I needed to confront my sister directly. It was clear that avoiding the issue was only making things worse, so I decided to call her and ask if we could meet up for coffee. She readily agreed, her voice cheerful and seemingly unaware of my growing concerns. We arranged to meet at a small cafe near her apartment. When we met, I was nervous, my hands trembling slightly as I stirred my coffee. My sister, on the other hand, was in high spirits, chatting enthusiastically about her wedding plans. She seemed completely oblivious to discomfort, which only made the situation more difficult for me. After a few minutes of listening to her talk, I realised I couldn't hold it in any longer. I interrupted her mid-sentence, my voice betraying the seriousness of what I was about to say. I told her that we needed to discuss something important. My sister, caught off guard by the sudden shift in tone, looked at me with surprise and asked what was wrong. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I began to explain. I told her that I had noticed how she had been behaving around Tom, my boyfriend, and that it was making me uncomfortable. I mentioned the flirting, the casual touches, and the lingering looks, things that had been bothering me for some time. I emphasized that her behavior needed to stop as I spoke. I watched her face transform through a range of emotions. At first there was surprise, then confusion, and finally anger. She demanded to know what I was talking about, vehemently denying that she had been flirting with Tom at all. I refused to back down, insisting that she had been doing exactly that, whether she realised it or not. I explained that her actions were not only inappropriate, but were also causing me a great deal of distress. She responded with a laugh, though it was far from a genuine one. She told me I was being ridiculous, dismissing my concerns by saying that Tom was practically family and that she was just being friendly. However, her words did little to ease the tension between us, and I could tell that this conversation had struck a nerve. As I sat there, it became clear that this was not going to be an easy issue to resolve, and the rift between us was likely only going to deepen. I couldn't hold back any longer and expressed my frustrations, pointing out that it was more than just friendliness. I explained that she was constantly finding excuses to be near my boyfriend, to touch him, and to laugh at all his jokes, even the ones that weren't particularly funny. To me, it was clear what she was doing, and it was making me increasingly uncomfortable as I spoke. I could see her face turn red with anger and disbelief. She was clearly shocked by my accusations, especially since they came so close to her wedding. She responded with a sharp retort, questioning my confidence and suggesting that I must be deeply insecure to accuse her of such behaviour. Her words stung, but I knew I had to stand my ground. I tried to explain that my concerns weren't about insecurity, but rather about respect. I told her she was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed and that her behaviour needed to stop immediately. Suddenly she stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, signalling the end of our conversation. She declared that she wasn't going to sit there and to listen to what she considered paranoid and ridiculous accusations. She made it clear that if I couldn't trust my own sister, then that was my problem, not hers. With that, she stormed out of the cafe, leaving me alone. With a swirl of emotions, I felt awful and began to question myself. Had I overreacted? Was I really just being paranoid? When I returned home, my boyfriend immediately noticed that something was wrong. He asked me what had happened, and I recounted the conversation I had just had with my sister as I shared the details. I could see the concern growing on his face when I finished. He let out a heavy sigh and told me that he thought I had made a big mistake. He was worried that Sarah would be deeply hurt, especially with her wedding just around the corner. Feeling defensive, I asked him if he was taking her side. He quickly reassured me that he wasn't taking sides, but he expressed his doubts that Sarah had been flirting with him, even if she had been, which he found unlikely. He believed that confronting her in such a direct way was not the best approach to handling the situation. His words left me feeling even more conflicted, unsure of whether I had done the right thing or not. As I felt tears welling up in my eyes, I couldn't help but ask, so what was I supposed to do? Just ignore it? The frustration and hurt were clear, and my voice sensing my distress. My boyfriend walked over and gently wrapped his arms around me. He suggested that perhaps I could have handled things differently, that maybe I could have talked to him more about it first, or approached Sarah in a way that was less confrontational. He expressed concern that now, with the way things had unfolded, Sarah was likely upset with both of us, and that this could cast a shadow over her upcoming wedding, making everything feel incredibly awkward, feeling overwhelmed. I pulled away from his embrace and questioned him. So this is all my fault. I needed to understand if he truly believed that I was to blame for the situation. He sighed deeply, clearly struggling to find the right words, and explained that he didn't mean to place the blame solely on me. However, he did think that I might have overreacted, letting my emotions get the better of me. We continued to argue for a while, but it became evident that we were not going to reach a resolution. There was a clear disconnect in our perspectives, and neither of us seemed willing to fully understand the other's point of view.